So, big weekend coming up. For those of you guys online, welcome. And, as you know, this is the weekend of the 5th anniversary yearly Houston Underwater Film Festival. What else is new? Well, Betsy and I are making our return to the Houston media on Wednesday. We're going to be on Houston Life once again and be interviewed.
On Wednesday?
On Wednesday.
Oh, good.
Yep. So that's channel 2. And I think it's, the channel is one of those things that on old TVs, you just had this thing that went click, 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 click like that on the TV, and
yeah,
no voice recognition, no internet, rabbit ears, all it. KPRC. They're the NBC affiliate, I think. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, NBC.
Yeah. So they were really nice to us last year. Actually invited us back this year. So okay. So other than that, everything's gone well. We had our dress rehearsal. Betsy, you want to make any comments about the festival? She is the festival director, in case anybody doesn't know that.
So I get that fun job. Okay.
You took that fun job.
Well, does anyone else volunteer for it? No, of course not. Okay. Just wanted to say that we have been over all the volunteer jobs and everything with everyone when we had our dress rehearsal, and I think everybody is ready. I am going to send out a list of the volunteer jobs and what time we're supposed to be there, and talk about parking and just all the usual stuff. I'll send something out to all the volunteers tomorrow, because I know there will be people who will go, oh, I forgot, what time is it I'm supposed to be there, so you'll get something in case you have questions, and you can email me back if you have any others. But I think we're ready to go.
Yeah, it's looking that way. We gotta. Who's picking up the lunch for the audio visual people?
Oh yeah, maybe we can go volunteer for
that. We can't forget that.
Tell you what happened last year. They did not tell us this, but if one of their workers goes 5 hours without a dinner break and we don't provide dinner, they fine us $100. And so they did that last year, and Debbie Menzie was looking at financials. We were going down the list of all the charges from Match, and we were going, what's this $100? And so she called them up and said, wait a minute. And so this year they sent me a special email telling me that we would be fined if we didn't provide dinner both days for the person up in the projection room.
So we're trying to figure out what the hell is dinner supposed to be. What if they're vegan or what, gluten free. I mean, come on.
It would be fine, just not a snack, like a real dinner.
Okay.
So we can either have somebody bring it, or we can give the guy some money and have him order whatever he wants with that money, And then on Sunday, we don't have to worry about it because we can feed him from our buffet.
I don't think that's going to work, because that's after his shift. That's after the shift.
No, they get there at 3 to set up. The food is there. So we can bring food.
We'll take this offline. I don't want to get charged another $100. Buy the guy a sandwich and tell him to shut up. Okay, let's move on. I shouldn't have brought that up. All right.
Yeah, it's your fault. Charge you the $100.
Okay, let's see. Officers, Frank's not. Well, first of all, we don't have any new attendees. So I don't get to embarrass anybody this time. Who's been diving?
Not that time.
Anybody on screen? No, Brian's been diving. Let's hear from.
All right.
I went with Chum on the annual Chum Takes the Kamal River, and we dove the Kamal. Some of it might have been considered slithering, but we did go up to the waterfall and dove under the waterfall, which was 13, 18 feet deep. So it was kind of cool. I've never dove under a waterfall, and a lot of pockets and holes in the rocks for the bass and the crappie, but I mean, I was in the water. That's all that counts.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, well, I know that Stephen's been diving. Where you been diving, Steve? Guam?
Well, mostly Guam. We came back about 3 weeks ago from a trip to Indonesia, where we did Triton Bay. I had a little accident, so I lost 8 days of diving. I kind of slashed my cranium open on the first day on the liveaboard. We stayed at a resort for 4 days and dove there, and then we went up to Raja Ampat. I was able to recover the last 2 days of diving, so bit of a loss. But we have the opportunity where I live. We're about 3.5 hour flight from Manila. We're about an hour and a half from Palau. Truck Lagoon, Chuk, we're at about not much more than an hour from there by air.
Mhm.
So we have a great opportunity to travel to a lot of places that folks sometimes only get to dream about.
Sure. Yeah, if you get hurt out there at Triton Bay, it's not a lot of options for medical care out there. I mean, it's the 2 hour boat ride to Kaimana.
Yeah, which turned out to be a 5 hour boat ride on the big boat because of the currents. So yeah. So
Did they have to take you? They had to take you there then.
yeah, we
Uh,
we we got on. Well, we were at Triton Bay. We were at a resort there, basically the only resort I know of there, and we went to the liveaboard in Kaimana. The liveaboard then turned around and went back to Triton Bay, and then after I got hurt, we went back to Kaimana. So it was it was quite a crap show, but all worked out in the end.
yeah, I saw I saw your stitches. It's quite a job they did on you.
Yeah, I mean, nothing but praise for the nurses who sewed me up there. The only critique I have is they weren't so good with what they call lidocaine. So after about
Lidocaine, yeah.
6 stitches, I want more lidocaine, more lidocaine.
Oh.
It hurt like hell.
Let's just say you wouldn't want to have brain surgery there, I don't think. But yeah.
No. But other than that, it was a good job. You can barely, it's right here. You can kind of see a shadow there. It was about an 8-inch
Wow.
gap. So
Wow.
a good cautionary I look around on the screen here and I looked around your room, and by and large, I think I'd be in the heart of the envelope for demographic there. Check out your accommodations and the liveaboard, and if they tell you things like, hey, watch your head going through here, that's one to take extra attention to. Or they say, hey, the floor's a little slippery here, that's a liveaboard operator who's really not doing proper risk management. And when you look at the age of people who can afford to go on most of these things, it tends to be a little grayer. I mean, I'm going to be 67 next month, and I will tell you that there were 14 people on the liveaboard. 8 of them were older than me. 8.
Yep, sounds about right.
The oldest guy was 82.
Uh-huh.
And
Getting
so, and several others in the 80-year-old range. So it's really, really something that I've drafted an article that I'm thinking about sending to Alert Diver that just kind of raises this issue, that says there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes between how liveaboards are constructed and how they're maintained, and who is actually going on them and what the risks are and how do you do proper risk management. So anyways, you get Alert Diver. I haven't done it yet. I've written the article. I haven't sent it in yet. So anyways, off top.
I'd like to introduce a friend of mine, Roberto. Say hello, Roberto.
Hello.
Hi, Roberto.
I dove with his
afternoon.
father, Roberto, in Cayman, and I think we got certified together.
Yes. Been a little while.
Hmm.
Good to be
Cool.
here. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay. Let's see what else. Just some business. Frank's not here. Other officer reports. I don't think we have any. The website got fully updated. I hope everybody goes and takes a look at it, because it should be fully functional. If you find anything that doesn't work, let me know. But it has all of the previous HUFs out there on pay-per-view. Basically, you can get the entire season, which is like 2 3-hour shows of the best underwater videos of that year. You can get that for $10 and just drive yourself crazy watching all this stuff. But it's all good. And this year, I think it's hard to say, but I think this year's the best crop yet. Just overall, we've had some previous films, I think, that were just outstanding, and we have that this time too. I mean, our buddy from Austria, Alfred Schassel, continues to do outrageous stuff, you know. And of course, Dustin's in there, and there's some other folks too doing some great macro. And I think that Made in Texas stuff is getting better and better. So you know,
I've been lobbying Steve to put one in for next year. I mean, I've seen his super macro and blackwater video and stuff like that. He's got plenty of work.
Sure.
All he has to do is put it together.
It's
and send it in.
free to send it in. Just have a look at the rules, and happy to have people from anywhere. 54 films from 29 countries around the world. So we'd love to have Guam on that map. So do it, Steve. But remember, you got to get past a group of 13 pretty ornery HUPS members who are on the panel, and fortunately, they don't decide who wins directly. They don't. They just decide who gets into the screening. And really, the way I feel, if you get into be screened on this, you're already a winner, because we actually reviewed. We received about 400 films because we don't charge for people to enter. So people, when they see it's free, they'll just put anything they have in, where they don't care whether it's underwater or not. But we got about 150 that actually qualified under the rules, and so we judged about 150 and came up with a show with about 54 films from that. So it's pretty standard. It's amazing. Like one year is 52 films, another year is 54. You know, so this one is going to be good. I'm continually impressed when I go back and look at them. So that's all going down. We have one other thing I know that's most important for this group is, what bar are we going to after we have the performances? And so both of the places we used in the past are, you know, not open at the moment. I don't know. They're always in the state of being sold and renovated and all that. Fortunately, we found another place that's, you know, still just a block or so away from the place. So it's easy to get to. We'll just walk over there. Looks like a really nice place. Wooster Gardens, I think. Yeah, have you been there? Yeah, yeah. It's got a nice little outdoor area there that we could sit if it's nice out. Anyway, Mary dug it up and has reserved a place for us, so we can go over there after the.
Do you know if we're going to have, how many of the out of town video makers or filmmakers going to show up?
We don't know. 2 or 3 have threatened to come and sounded like they were going to come. And so, in fact, we had that conversation on the way over here. Betsy's going to ping them again now that it's a few days away, and you know, see if we can get them to commit so we know they're coming and have a name tag made up for them and stuff like that. And also let Justin know if he's got somebody to interview. We hope we can do that.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, absolutely. Yeah, so the information, everything you need to know is on the HUF website, huff.hups.org. We have a little bit more of a problem with hups.org. It's pretty well unmaintained. Joe has been maintaining it for years and years and years, and he's been asking, he needs some help, and he does need help because he doesn't have time to do some of the updates now. So we're looking for somebody that's got a little bit of yeah. Okay, we can, yeah, it doesn't have to be one guy that's the webmaster. You know, if you're good at it, you can go in and do one section and he can help us with it. But I just wanted to mention that while we had a few people here that might be able to help. I think
just get hold of me, Craig. I am slowly catching up. I'm back in country now, so I just need to get with Martin on the photo contest this year, and I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay. No, that's good. I mean, no criticism. You've been telling us for 2 years now you want some help. That's my problem, because I haven't been able to roust anybody out, you know. So we'll keep working on it. And what else? The raffle is going great guns. We just for some of you who are U.S. citizens and might be interested and you donated items, we think that we have a way now that if you want to donate items to the raffle, that you can do it as a donation to the Aqua Foundation, which was just set up last year by the TGCC, and many of you are supporters of Aqua. You can donate that as a gift or pass through to the HUF, and that way you actually donate the gift specifying that you want it to go to HUF, and that item then is passed on. You know, there's a little bit of formality. We need some paperwork that you did donate it and it got passed on to HUF, and we'll do that. But then you can use that as a U.S. tax deduction if it works for you. We don't give tax advice, so you know we're like every other foundation. Like we're 501c3, so you should be able to deduct it, but you need to check with your tax advisor before you do that. So that's good news. And tax deduction, I want you to take me to lunch if that's the case, you know, because you got too much money. So we fought through kind of one case. We know how to do it now, and so we should be able just to do it without a whole lot of fuss once we know how this works. So that's pretty much what I have to say now.
Gadget time?
Except for I was presented with a dilemma today. My better half showed me something that's supposed to be a gadget, and I told her that's not gadget, that's goop. And so now I'm going to have to change the name of the thing to Gadget or Goop of the Month.
All right, so this is my goop of the month. Okay, so this is mainly for the ladies, but for you guys who care about your hair and don't want it to be dried out and frizzy, this is for
Frizzy.
you to.
Frizzy is
don't
the worst.
care.
No, I don't. I can't stand the frizzies.
You can't stand the frizzy. Okay, so you need some of this. So this stuff is called AquaGuard, and it was originally made for swimmers to protect their hair from chlorine, but it also works for salt water. So those of us who are underwater 3-4 hours a day for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, you know what it does to your hair. So you can just slather this stuff on, and it's thick, and it just coats your hair and protects it, and then it just rinses right out with water when you get in the shower after you dive. But
Why doesn't it rinse out in the water when you? Why doesn't it rinse out when you jump in the water?
Well, you know, you wear a cap.
Oh, you got a hood on. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Right.
Okay.
So, and you know, most people do anyway. So this stuff was really good for me because it keeps my hair out of my mask. You know, you're always trying to make sure you don't have hair in your mask. And so this just slips right back, you know, so there's there's no danger of hair getting in your mask, which was a secondary advantage. So anyway, it's really good stuff. I really enjoyed using
Hold it right up to the lens there so they
We
can all.
spent, you know, a while in Analau in January, and I used this, and it was great.
Hold the label right up to the lens. No, right up to the lens.
Closer, closer. There we
Closer.
go. AquaGuard.
Show the
Is it-
audience.
Is it reef safe?
It's reef safe, it's UV protection, it's cruelty free,
There's gluten free
It
as
has
well. You know.
vitamin B5 in it, and it's color safe for those who color their hair. Okay.
And gentle on sensitive skin, if you know what I mean.
I have another gadget that Betsy we were talking after the dress rehearsal, and she had said that she had an issue diving somewhere and her feet were floating up above her, keeping her feet down. So, and when I wear my 7 mil wetsuit, and go to invert to scrub or something, I have trouble getting my feet back under, my fins back under me. So I found these ankle weights from Excess Scuba on Amazon, and they're little 1 pound soft ankle weights, and they have quick clips on them. And right now they're about $29, but they're 12% off, so they're $26 on Amazon. They're little 1 pound weights for each ankle, if you happen to wear super thick wetsuits.
Or have boots that have a lot of air in them, like me.
I think Jan Boffman was the first one I saw wearing those. She has a,
Well, that's right. She does.
she has
Yeah.
a, so I didn't,
Email and I'll put it in the newsletter. Send me the details.
You know, Jan has a little more buoyancy than some of us.
all right, Dennis, that's really getting on. you
I
know,
used them
we
when I
use
was
those a lot.
rehabbing after surgery.
That's
and-
dangerous territory you're getting into. Go
We
ahead.
use those a lot with adaptive divers because their legs have atrophied, but they tend to float a lot. So we will strap their knees together and then put 2 pound weights on each foot, on each ankle. And then you need to make sure you remember to take those off before you lift them out of the water.
Definitely. Okay, I think it's time for me to turn it over to Dennis to have the program. Any other business?
Well, I last year when I invited Stephen Wolborsky, sometimes called Steve, to talk to us, he gave us one of the best programs we've had in HUPS for a long time that was related to skills, and it was all about macro and super macro, and it was just an outstanding program. So I knew that he had been doing a lot of video, especially with his all of his diopters and macro and super diopters. He is posting stuff on a regular basis to Facebook, and they're like, what, about 30-second clips? Is that about it?
And I'll actually touch on that. But yeah, they're short. Everything today is really for social media needs to be short.
Mhm. Yeah, but they're all very good. And so I knew that he had put together a how-to program on how to do video. And so, in fact, I think you did it internationally, didn't you?
This presentation.
Yes.
Yeah, I've done it several times. I've done it on one of the Facebook groups that many of you may be a member of, with Marine Pixels. So they invited me to do it, and I did it there. And I've done it for South Florida, and I've done it for your friends up in Dallas.
Yeah, the Dupes group. So I asked him if he would do something for us today, and he agreed. And so, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you and Martin, and we'll have a program.
All right, and I'm gonna, if it's okay with you all, I'm gonna take the screen.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm playing the video. You see in the video?
we see it. Yeah.
There we go.
It's working.
That's a Costa Cielo Kuroshima. We got lots of them here. Here's something else we have from Guam. Not as much as in the Philippines, but
Oh my.
and just a little bit of black water from Adilao. And finally, the holy grail of blackwater diving. That lady right there is my wife, shooting. Or not. Okay. You guys see all those videos okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the context of this is I shot stills for the better part of 10 years, starting from very, very little knowledge with a compact camera to shooting at a I feel a pretty good level and teaching others how to do it. And I got to the point where I said, for years I said, no, I don't do video. I was adamant about it. I don't do it. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'll try it. I met a guy at Anilau, a guy named Walter Marty, who's a very, very accomplished underwater videographer. And I was pretty motivated by talking to Walter and seeing how he was working with folks and the things he recommended. So I said, I'll give it a try. Made it sort of a New Year's resolution. Little knowing the steep incline I had before me. And so my context here in talking to various groups is to help you maybe get a little bit of a head start if you are an underwater photographer. Maybe you've tried video, or maybe you haven't, or maybe you're a little bit deterred from trying it because it seems so complex, to try to reduce some of that complexity and give you a good place to start from. And that's what I did for myself. So with that as the underlying context, oops, sorry. My video is not wanting. For some reason now my screen is not wanting to play. So let me go to the next slide. So video capture is definitely much more complicated than stills. But it's rewarding. And I hope you can see this one. This was about a week ago. And that's a Circe borbonica that we have here on Guam. So big picture, I'm going to cover 3 areas for you today. I'm going to talk about some of the terminology and jargon that goes with video that's perhaps different from what you have experienced in still photography. Then we'll talk a little bit about some of the additional equipment or different equipment that will help make your videography a lot better and a lot more rewarding. And then finally, I'll offer you a few of my personal opinions on the creative process behind video. So in terminology, the first thing to go over is formats. To use a metaphor, format is like a big box. That's the big box that everything else goes into. Would be the format of your video. And there's several that are quite common. .mov is an Apple-derived format that they use in QuickTime, but you can use it in a lot of other projects. It's a bit higher quality, more memory, and there's always a trade-off in cost with video in terms of the more quality you get, the more memory it's going to take, the more computing power you need, the more external hard drives you need to save stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to learn that. You'll learn that pretty quickly on your own, or you can learn it here today and be prepared. The second big format is MP4 or MPEG-4. It's lower quality a little bit than MOV, but the good news is it's very popular for social media. Primarily because, again, it uses a little bit less memory, so you can get it posted up fairly quickly. And then Sony has its own proprietary format called XAVC. They're designed that around 4K and higher quality. And however, you may require a transcoding plugin to process that depending on the program you're using for your video processing. And then there are others that are out there you might see, and some of those are older. But really, for most of us, my recommendation for you would be to go ahead and use .mov or .mp4. What I do is I shoot in .mov. So that way I can process it and render it at MOV if I want to. But typically I'm rendering an MP4 because, again, it's quicker, it takes a lot less memory, the files are smaller, and they're good enough. And so again, if you want to just stick with MP4, if you're certain that all you're going to be doing is going into online sharing or just for funsies, then it might behoove you to just go ahead and shoot in MP4 as well. But again, if you want to have more options for your video, shoot in .mov. Transferring from MOV to MP4 is simple. You can shoot in MOV and render in MP4. The reverse is not always true. So you have to understand what your program can do and whether you need another plugin or you need some other software in order to go from MP4 to kind of up it into MOV. So that's the box. Now, in terms of what goes in it, there's a video stream of things that go into it and settings and selections, and then there's an audio stream of settings and selections. I'm not talking about audio today. I have very limited to no expertise in it. I haven't even dug into the Fairlight module that is in DaVinci Resolve, program I use, but I will talk about video. And the first thing I want to talk about is the resolution. So you see these terms: 8K video, 4K, 1080p, 720p, et cetera, full HD. Some of them are synonyms for one another. So full HD is 1080p, same thing. And then the P's get confusing too, and I'll get to that in a second. But this particular image kind of gives you an idea of what they're talking about. In essence, it's the amount of the sensor writ large that's going to get sampled for the video. So it's a little bit misleading because it looks like the little rectangles inside it are all just going to sample that one part of the screen. It's not true. It samples the whole screen, but it's a way to represent the size. So first you've got your SD, which is 480p. Each frame is 0.64 megapixels. They're small, but they're also low quality. Then full HD, as I mentioned, is 1080p. That's the width. It's 1080 pixels. So the P, it stands for pixels, or PX, pixels.
Yeah, that's vertical, not horizontal.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The width is 1080. And
Vertical.
the shorter one is 1080. How's that?
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. All right. And each frame is 2.1 megapixels. When you talk 4K, to make it more confusing, we go from the shorter one to the longer one. So the longer side is 3840. There's also things like C4K, which samples over 4,000 pixels on the longer side. And each frame is 8.3 megapixels. I put on this slide what the TG6 can do, just so to show you that within the constraints of the 12 megapixel sensor of the TG6, you can shoot 4K video because it doesn't even use all the sensor. However, when you get to 8K at 33.1 megapixels per frame, you are in a range now where you're going to exceed the sensor size of many of the most popular cameras out there. So 8K is certainly a special case, and I already explained Note 1 to you. And then another thing that you need to be aware of in your camera is some cameras will crop the sensor at higher resolution, which means they actually won't sample from across the whole image. They'll sample from a portion of the image that's already cropped. So they'll go from a full frame, say, to an APS-C, which is a lower size. And it's usually the 1.6 is the crop factor. So you have to invert that to figure out what the actual size is in relation to all the full frame sensor. So resolution. And again, what I said, an 8K is typically going to be something that you'll get with like a Z8, a Z9. I think the Canon R5 II will do it. And certainly your cinema cameras can do 8K or higher. So if you're actually going for the big bucks and the big system, then you can do 8K or 12K or even I've seen one that's the Ursa 17K camera. So Cinecams are a total different world, and that's not really the subject for today. So my recommendation for most of us shooting a hybrid camera would be 4K. 720p and lower is the quality is not good. And again, 8K, one of the other limitations is there's very few people can even view it in its full glory and resolution. So the second thing, so first we have the resolution. Now we have the frame rate. How many frames per second are we going to capture? Now that also, to be more confusing, is also denoted in P, but it's not pixels. And 24p, you see this, or 60p. And that's not to be confused with the pixel size or the length or width of the pixels. And this also, in film cinematography, in the old days, measured in degrees, but that's a lot less common today. And mostly what we're talking about is frames per second. A faster frame rate lets you slow your imagery, your video down into a more fluid looking final product. So it's generally beneficial to shoot at a faster frame rate. Typically, what I recommend, the best timeline setting is 24 frames per second, technically 23.976 frames per second. That gives you the film-like look. But it won't necessarily slow the video on its own. You have to go into the clip and change the clip attributes to slow it down, which of course makes the clip longer. And you can also do it in the timeline, typically using a speed control option. So most of the video programs allow you to differentially control the speed. They let you ramp it up to faster or ramp it down to slower, and then manipulate it in such a way. But for me, what I do is I shoot in 60p because my camera does and lets me. And so I'm able to then just slow it right away, even before I start to process them and render them and fit them together. I've already slowed them to 23.976. And almost always that works pretty well for me. So my recommendation for underwater videography would be to shoot in 60 frames per second or even faster, maybe even up to 120. Because a lot of your critters are pretty fast. Your sharks, a lot of your rays, and the videos that are shot and rendered in the same frame rate aren't always good. So that's just something that I suggest to you. Now, the third thing they talk about is bit rate. That's, in essence, the mass of data that you upload every second. It's measured in megabits, not megabytes. So that's also somewhat confusing in video. And a megabyte is a lot more than a megabit. But a higher bit rate, again, requires more memory, but yet gives you better quality. So you see right there that there's a trade-off. And you may hit a roadblock in your camera, and I'll talk about that in just a second, because that's the card upload capability. So you definitely want to read the fine print on your media card, and you want to know what it stands for, what it means, how much data can you actually upload. I didn't know this until one day I was shooting some small stuff, and my camera all of a sudden said, the card can't upload it. So I realized I had to change some of my settings. I had to change my bit rate so that I could not exceed what my card could do. And then I, of course, went and bought a better card, a higher capability card. Again, more money. So there's, again, that trade-off. The recommendation, though, is whatever is high enough to keep pace with resolution and frame rate. Like for 4K 60, 60 megabits per second, it will typically work. If you want to buy yourself some pad, then get a card that has a higher frame rate or bit rate capability. The next thing is called codecs, and you probably have seen this term before, codec. There's two things it could stand for: compression and decompression, or coding and decoding a video. You have to consider that you're uploading a lot of information when you're doing video, because I've done the math, and 1 minute of 1080p at 60 frames per second is 30 gigabytes without coding, without compression. And I just calculated that at the 2.1 megapixels per frame times 4 bytes per pixel times 60 frames per second times 60 seconds. So 1 minute of 4K 60, which is what I shoot, would be 120 gigabytes, and 32 seconds would fill a 64 gigabyte SD card. So a lot of options. The common ones you'll see is H.264, which is really good for the web. It balances the file size and the quality pretty well, but nowadays they've come up with a new version called H.265, which works better for 4K video, and it results in the end in smaller file sizes. It does require more processing power. I will talk about that later in the presentation when we talk about computers. Then Apple ProRes has a family of codecs. You can pick one that corresponds to your processing power, settings you recorded in, and how much storage you've got. There's a couple of specialized cases like RAW. You need to use whatever your manufacturer recommends. RAWs a lot of times are their own codec. It depends if it's compressed or uncompressed RAW, and how much different kinds of data you're taking in. So there's some study required if you've got a camera that records an internal RAW, or which is kind of new, that it's a new thing, or if you have an external recorder that will record or output RAW to a drive, to a solid state drive. Not all cameras are going to give you a choice. Some cameras are going to say, we do H.264, that's it, and that's all you got. So my recommendation, though, would be to start with H.264, H.265, unless your particular manufacturer recommends a different codec. So color. These are just some of the terms that go with color science. And like I say, tilt. This really is complicated. So I'm going to try to simplify it, at least to explain what the definitions are. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the color space or the gamut. RGB, not Ruth Bader Ginsburg, not RBG, but RGB is your red, green, and blue. That's your primary colors, whence every other color is created. And the color space and gamut are interchangeable terms for our purposes. So if you see either of those words, they're the same thing. And again, it's how many colors will be produced by the amount of red, green, and blue that is available to you based on the color space. Examples you've probably seen is sRGB, Adobe RGB, Rec 2100, etc. You'll see a term Rec 709, and that's equivalent to sRGB in the video world. And sRGB is very common. So that's what I recommend we use. I've got a graphic here that shows you. So there's a horseshoe shape below all that, that is the shape of all the visible color. And in essence, these different color spaces are subsamples, and some of them even go into the not visible color, which is interesting. But you can see that sRGB is relatively small in comparison to some of the other ones like Adobe RGB. So it's a bit of a smaller color space. So you may come up short, but fairly unlikely in reality, because there are other variables that will determine how many colors you can make. And I'll get to that in a second. So again, RGB, I did the Ruth Bader at the bottom there, RGB or Rec 709. And you want to, it's easiest if you're consistent across the board. So if your camera has a color space option, whatever you use in the camera, use that in the processing software. A second term is gamma. Gamma is a measurement of the luminance or brightness. It's complicated and generally not selectable in the camera. But it is contained within color profiles. So if you select a particular color profile for your camera, which I'll come to, then the gamma is definitely included in that. And gamma also can be adjusted in post. You can select a different gamma, and of course you have the ability to adjust luminance or brightness in any event in your color settings on your post-processing software. My recommendation, if you are able to select, a good starting point is gamma 2.4. But if you're not able to select, and I wouldn't concern myself with it because it will be covered in some other setting on your camera. Chroma. This is a description of technically and actually how color and brightness information are sampled for the compression you're using. And you'll see these ratios. So they'll say 420 or 422 or 444. As you could probably intuitively guess, 444 is a lot more than 422, which is a lot more than 420. 420 is the least, but I'm going to show you what that means. So really, it can be difficult to notice it because, again, there are other variables, the color space, as well as the bit depth that control how the color is actually rendered. But more quality in general, again, is more processing power and storage. So if you're going to be in the 444 realm, then you're going to be in using a lot of information. My recommendation is if you have 422, you should use it. But if you don't, then you go with 420. And this is what it is. So if the first row consists of 4 colors, if you're sampling 4 colors in a first row of sampling, then you'll be sampling 4 different colors in the second row, and that's 4, 4, 4. So that's a lot more color available to you. 422 has two different colors in the first row of 4, and then 2 separate colors in the second row of 4, and 420 just repeats the pattern in each row. And that's it in a nutshell, give you a visual of what that kind of would look like. All right, bit depth. Bit depth is at least as important as chroma because that gets into exactly how many different colors, shades, and variants you can achieve. The greater the bit depth, the greater the range of color, and it's based on each channel of red, green, and blue. So if you do an 8-bit, it's 2 to the 8 colors per channel. 256 different reds, 256 different greens, and 256 different blues. All the permutations thereof yield 16.8 million different colors available to you. Now, you would think that's enough, and I will tell you sometimes that's not enough. And you'll get color noise. So when the program goes, I think this is a color I don't really have, I'm going to guess, you'll get color noise. 10-bit, same arithmetic as the other one, but it yields 1.1 billion colors because there's 2 to the 10th power available to you in each of the channels. And then 12-bit is a whopping 68.7 billion different colors. And a lot of the raw footage you see today is 12-bit, 12-bit 422. So that's really robust for the color. My recommendation is 8-bit. If you can do 10-bit, great. But when, again, you find out within your own camera that, like my camera, to get 10-bit, to get 422 10-bit, I can't shoot at 4K 60. I have to shoot at 4K 30 or 4K 24. I get a lower frame rate. So I specifically and personally have selected the frame rate for me is a higher precedence than the color bit depth or the color chroma. And those are typically the kind of choices you have to make unless you have a really expensive camera or a cine camera. Now, picture profile. This is letting your camera decide how it puts a lot of this stuff together to yield the actual picture you're looking at. And it reduces your post-processing requirements appreciably. So these are things you actually set in the camera to say, I want my picture to look a particular way. And there's lots of different variables. It will adjust the contrast, the saturation, sharpness. Excuse me, I'm having a cat fight in the background. And the color tone. Profiles will have different parameters for all those things. Those are like presets. So if you ever use presets in your still images, it's kind of the same sort of deal. But you also have the ability a lot of times in your camera to tweak the individual inputs. So if you like a particular picture profile, but it's not quite contrasty enough for you, you can raise or lower the contrast or saturation, etc. And then different cameras have different names for them. Natural, Cine-V, Cinetone, Vivid, Flat, and so forth. So they yield different outputs than from each other. And again, they're designed to reduce or to minimize the amount of color grading or color correction you need to do in post-processing. Now, there's 2 special cases. The first is RAW. RAW does not have a picture profile. You have to process it with compatible software. Some of the RAW comes out of the camera and it's perfect. It looks great. And that's a bonus because if it looks great, you have to do nothing or nearly nothing to it. And that's a good deal. But sometimes it isn't. So it's got a lot of data and it gives you a lot of latitude to really get the picture you want to look like. The same is not true for log. Log, there's different manufacturers. I'll show that in a second. But log intentionally gives you a very flat profile that lets you maximize the dynamic range, which means you can get detail out of the shadowy parts and you can bring back the bright parts. So there's a lot you can do to really manipulate your clip when you're shooting in log. So log came out because at the time it was difficult to do raw. There were some legal reasons why people couldn't use raw, couldn't create raw profiles internal to the camera. And that's all done with and gone. But a lot of the manufacturers came out with these log picture profiles as sort of a substitute for what they thought raw would look like. So much like sometimes your raw image comes out of the camera, your still image, and it looks kind of meh, but you're able to create a fantastic photo from it. Same with log profile in video, except it almost always looks terrible coming right out of the camera. That's characteristic. So Panasonic is V-Log-L, Sony is S-Log. S-Log 3 is one of them. They have S-Log 2 as well. Nikon is N-Log and so forth. And again, you have to color grade it in post. There's really a couple of ways to do it. One of the easier ways is they have these things called LUTs or lookup tables. When you apply a LUT to a log clip, it makes a lot of the corrections. My experience is you still need to color correct, and then if you want it to look a particular way, you have to color grade it. So it's not a perfect solution. There's other things. DaVinci Resolve has something called Color Space Transform that will convert your log footage to Rec 709 sRGB color space standard. And again, it's my experience, not perfect. You end up having to correct and grade anyways. And one of the things you may be able to do in your cameras, you may be able to actually ask to upload the LUT on a card to your camera and have it apply it to the footage as you're shooting it, so it does look closer to the finished product that you'll get after you process it. But again, what you get on the computer isn't going to look like what you saw on your monitor because the actual log profile is very flat. So my recommendations, if you're proficient in color grading and you have it available to you, raw or log is great. If not, and I would suggest this probably to most people who are just starting to do video, go ahead and look at what your camera offers you and select a profile you prefer. Very often, like for underwater, a cinema type profile or a vivid profile is pretty good. Makes for a nice looking clip. So I would recommend that to you. Okay, color grading. Again, this could be in a simple software, making some simple adjustments to something that there are people that this is their entire job, and they get paid a lot of money in places like Hollywood to do color grading. Now, there's really it's a bit of a misnomer because it's actually two separate processes. The first process is what all of you should be used to who process your photos, and that's color correction. So that's just kind of getting the histogram to look the way you want, white balance, contrast, exposure, whites. I could give you a whole class in Lightroom Classic, but that's not what we're talking about today. But all those little different sliders and variables just to make it look kind of right. Color grading actually starts to go into the realm of artistic control. And what do you want the clip to look like? Do you want it to have that sort of old time quality? Do you want it to look like something from the 1920s or the 30s? Do you want it to have lush, rich colors? Do you want it to be a little more muted? What do you want? And that's where that comes in. Do you want it to be kind of gloomy? Do you want it to be kind of happy? And that's what color grading will do. And it's, so I've said that already. And here's the reason why this is incredibly more complex than just doing a single still photo. Because remember, when you're shooting 60 frames per second for a minute, that is a lot of frames. 60 frames per second times 60 seconds per minute equals 3,600 frames. And if they are not consistent in color because somehow the color changed, if you're shooting natural light and the sun went in behind the cloud or whatever happened, or your lighting blinked or something else happened in the medium, you may not have consistency across your clip or across from one clip to the next clip. If you're looking for consistency, you've got to get down and dirty and do this kind of work. And again, raw and log give you the most capability. And if you're in a software, usually they have different different terms for it. And no, in DaVinci Resolve, it's the color module or the color panel. And you just go over to color and there it is. And there's all your tools. And you could spend a lifetime learning that and probably not learn all of it. Or you could get down and dirty pretty quickly and do a few things that work for you and get you ready to put your videos up on social media. So I would recommend for color grading, find a good online course. I did one from MZ, but I will say to you that at least with DaVinci Resolve, it's made by Blackmagic. Blackmagic has awesome tutorials on everything, and they have a multi-thousand page guide that tells you what every single tool does. It's really pretty robust, and you can start there and then see if you want to go in. There's different there's a million YouTubes, millions of YouTubes on DaVinci Resolve. There's people that Darren, I forget his last name, Mostyn. Darren Mostyn is a really good, Mostyn, is a really good color guy. Casey Ferris is a really good fusion guy for special effects. So if you're interested in those things, I would go look for those experts and either buy a class from them or find out what they offer for free. Okay, that is the longest section of the presentation. These next two sections are much shorter, but I want to talk to you a little bit about what some of the unique or specialized equipment for video would be. Again, the big picture is, unless you've got unlimited money to spend, you got 50 grand or 100 grand and you can buy a cine camera and a big Gates or Nauticam housing for it, you're going to end up having to compromise on something or some things, parameters for your shooting. It may be, what can you record? How, you know, really, what's the upload ability? What does the camera do? And what does your card do? Or it could be, what does your computer let you do? And I'm going to get to that in a little bit about the computer. Lighting. So with stills, you can shoot stills with strobes, which are very powerful but very brief, or you can use constant lighting and you make some adjustments, maybe raise your ISO, maybe slower your shutter speed, and you can shoot fairly decent stills with most cameras with enough constant light, especially macro or super macro. It doesn't really take a lot. But for video, you've got to have either, unless you're going to become an expert in natural light video, and I can tell you deeper than about 5 meters, 15 to 20 feet, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to do natural light videography. You're going to need video lights or constant lighting. And you'll see lights are advertised a lot by the lumen count, 8,000 lumens. It also has color temperature at 5,000 Kelvin or 6,000 Kelvin. And it also may talk about the beam width, but you need to, if it doesn't tell you the beam width, you need to know the beam width, because if your lens is wider than your beam width, you're going to have areas of your image that aren't going to be properly lit. So you need to have a sufficiently wide beam width, and maybe you have to use a diffuser, but if you put a diffuser on to increase your beam width, you're going to reduce the intensity of the lighting. The effective lumen count goes down. So again, there's a lot of juggling that goes on with that. Are you doing macro or super macro? So this is a light that I have, Kraken. This is the Solar Flare Mini. I use 18Ks on my normal video rig, and then I use the 15Ks for blackwater diving. But we only usually run them at 3,000 because that's about all I need. I only use them for fill light in video and very often don't use them. But when I need them, they're there. And if I want to do like a turtle or want to do something else, I can crank them all the way up to 18K each with a nice wide bandwidth. But for my macro and super macro, I tend to use a focus light, a narrow beam, because even though it's fewer lumens, those lumens are concentrated in a much smaller spot. So a wide beam with a lot of lumens that's spread out over a wide area may not be more effective, and probably isn't more effective than a narrow beam that's in a very narrow area. And that gives you good super macro. So for super macro, I just use my backscatter MW4300 light in the macro mode on the 4th or 5th level. So the second to the highest or the highest level. And almost all of those videos you just saw were filmed that way. Not the blanket octopus, that was cranking, but the other stuff was generally filmed with just the smaller light in macro. And then of course, wide angle I just talked about. So my wife likes to say, people will, it's like everybody who's new at underwater photography, it seems to me, I'm on like Reddit chats, subreddits about underwater photography, on Facebook groups, and you get these people that are new and they want to make $1 out of 35 cents, right? I don't have much money. What can I get for $1,000 to produce photos like David Duboulet? My answer is nothing. Buy David Duboulet's photos because you aren't going to be able to do it. But what my wife likes to say is, look, you just need to bring enough light to the party. And that's really the bottom line, certainly on videography in the main, is you've got to have enough light, the right kind of light to the party, and rock on. So here's the MW4300 example. So it's MW4300. Well, that indicates the maximum amount of light power output, 4,300 lumens. That's in the video mode at the top of 3 settings. It's an 85-degree beam width. So again, that single light maybe isn't going to, if you have a dome port or you have a wet wide-angle dome, it may be not going to cover the whole area you're shooting. It might, depending on what focal length and what you're trying to shoot, et cetera, but it probably won't, and it probably is not enough light unless you're really, really, really close. However, when you crank that baby down to macro mode, you get up to 1,400 lumens, but in a 14-degree beam width, and it really can isolate like the skeleton shrimp, like the Costa Ciela, and give you all the color and everything you need. So it's pretty good. I really rely on it a lot for my macro. All right, a tripod. If you are going to try to shoot macro or super macro video, you need a tripod. Because no matter how still-handed you think you are, you know, I was a pilot in the United States Air Force for years, and I thought I got great, super solid hands, and I started to do macro video. My friends were nice. They said, nice video. Do you have a tripod? And I kind of got the hint. They were very shaky, and I don't have in-body image stabilization in my video camera, so it's doubly important to have a tripod. It gives you a good platform, plus it's better for the environment than just laying your camera down on the ground. Because a lot of times your macro subjects are on the sand or dirt or near to it, and you just can't image them unless you're down there with them. So by putting it up on the tripod, you're minimizing your jitteriness, and you are also being kinder to the environment and to the subjects because you're at a kind of a set distance from them and not trying to figure it out. And here's are 3 examples. Everything like if you've got a TG7 or 6, the one on the left, the flex arm is pretty good, was more than sufficient, but it really can't support a big rig well. The one in the middle is kind of the Gucci standard. It's got an arm on it, so for panning. So it's got a panning arm on it and nice adjustable legs. And then the one on the right is actually what I have. It's also made by Flex Arm, which is a company in Italy, but it's nice carbon fiber, really good clamps, really good legs, and a base that's basically compatible with any camera. If you look at the bottom of your housing when you get home, you'll see that there's pre-drilled holes there. So and for most of them. So if you have that on your housing, you're already good to go. You can buy a lot of these tripods and they'll screw right on, and it doesn't take anything special to get there. All right, monitor recorder. These are really good. A monitor is excellent for focusing and composing, especially if for macro, I primarily am doing manual focus because it's faster and it doesn't focus breathe or hunt. So when I'm doing that, a monitor is great when I turn the focus peaking on. Focus peaking just tells you, oh, what's in the best focus. I use a color. I use red because it stands out a lot. And you can really see it. With my old eyes, even better than the LCD to look at a monitor. And so you can really compose well and you can shoot well with one. Formatting options. So what happened, what I was told, is the company Red, which is was a boutique line of Cinecams, created their proprietary RAW format, and then Nikon tried to go forward with the RAW format, and Red sued them, and it was tied up in litigation for quite a while. Well, Nikon bought Red, so that litigation is gone, And in the meanwhile, other companies came up with their own proprietary RAW formats, and on the higher end cameras was making internal RAW recording available. But before, in order to get raw output, a lot of times you had to run it through a recorder. So anything that's a recorder is typically also a monitor. So you could use it as a monitor for better shooting, but then it would record to its own solid state drive and give you raw output when your camera couldn't do it. So that was a bonus. But as the cameras today, like the Z5 II just came out, and that's an entry-level full frame from Nikon, but it has internal RAW recording. There's also a clunk factor. These things are big. I know they make them kind of look small when you go on Backscatter to look at them. They are big. Well, if you get the Nauticam, the housing for the recorder monitor is almost as big as the housing for the camera, and you've got that sitting on top. So I'll show you two. The one on the left is one I actually have. It's a good product, but it's a monitor only. It's from Anglerfish, and for a variety
That's
of
what I
reasons.
have.
Yeah, that right. And it's not working with my camera right now, which has been an ongoing thing, and I think it has something to do with the HDMI connections.
Yeah, get another HDMI. I had the same problem.
I have. I've worked with the owner of the company, and he sent me multiple different ones, and I replaced the HDMI in my camera. For some reason, it just doesn't like the GH5S, I think. But when I get another camera, I'll try it again. The one on the right, that's the Nauticam housing, and that generally fits in a Tomos monitor recorder. And that thing alone is almost $3,000 for the housing alone. The monitor, $700-800, depending on what you're buying new. So it's a big investment, and it's a big piece of kit to go on top. All right, your computer. You know, you got to look at a lot of things. What is your central processing unit? How big is it? How many cores? How about your graphics processing unit? How much RAM do you have? How much storage do you have? Are all important. So when I started video, I was going along. I had a MacBook Air with an M1 MacBook Air that I had bought, and I had 8 gigs of RAM, and I think I had a 10 or 12 core GPU. And when I started to do stuff in DaVinci Resolve, my computer was like, I think I need to throw up. I mean, it would just grind to a complete halt. And so I ended up buying a top-of-the-line, for me, a top-of-the-line M4 MacBook Air with a terabyte of storage, 64 gigs of RAM, 40-core GPU, and I think it's a 20-core CPU. And it's even with that, certain things are slow. Noise reduction in DaVinci Resolve is very, very slow. And I have to use something called a render cache in order to get that to move along a lot faster. Everything else, lightning fast. And I can do all kinds of other stuff on the computer. But you don't have to go where I went, but you are going to need a lot of RAM. If there's any two things on here that are most important, it'd probably be the GPU and the RAM. So you need to look at what your graphics can do, what various video-centric sources recommend, and you definitely need to look at your RAM, because if you want to produce high-quality stuff for the HUF, then you need to look at what the computer can do. What can your monitor do? Is your monitor color calibrated? Is that important to you? Do I need to get a color calibrated monitor or a studio monitor, something like that? Or can I get by on that looks about right? What is about your removable media? That was also one of the first things I learned. As I started to process videos and save them on my computer, I realized very quickly that my computer would get filled in about 2 weeks. So I've made a pretty good investment in removable solid state drives. That the good news is they're about the size of a business card, and many of them go up to 4 terabytes or more. So that's a studio. That's an image of a studio monitor. Apple makes that one, but there's other manufacturers that make color calibrated monitors. And on the right is one of those solid state SanDisk drives. And I use right now I'm usually using the 4 terabytes ones. And again, they have upload and download speeds as well. A little less important because typically I'm just copying from my computer hard drive to a solid state drive. And I always have a master one. My master is 8 terabytes, and I could make 2 copies when I back up. And what are you processing with? So I have these friends, they're a dive instructor couple locally on Guam. They love to make videos of their classes and the fun things they're out there doing with their dives. And I convinced them to buy a couple of Kraken lights. They haven't taken them out of the box yet, and it's been a year. So I'm kind of giving up. I've offered, I'll take you down. I'll show you how to use them. They're busy. They're doing this, that. They're all over the place. But they're producing these videos that they kind of looked okay. The basic underlying footage was garbage, but they had music and they had nice transitions and they had a few effects. So I went to the lady and said, hey, let me blah, blah, blah. And I said, hey, can I be honest with you? I think your footage could be better, but you guys obviously know something about video processing because the transitions, et cetera, look good. She goes, I don't know anything about it. I just put that stuff into a phone app and it makes the video come out the other end. So all I can say is no matter how much AI or no matter how much bells and whistles your phone app has, it will not fix. RS stands for real crappy synonym video. Another program a lot of people use is FCP Final Cut Pro. Adobe Premiere Pro. These are subscription. I'm not sure about FCP. If you're an FCP user, you can tell me, but I think that's subscription now. I know that Premiere Pro is, and it ain't cheap. And then there's the Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, which if you're not committed to any of these other softwares, DaVinci Resolve, the basic version is free, and it has a lot of capability. And if you want to upgrade to the studio version, it's typically $300, $299. Sometimes it goes on sale for Black Friday, $50 off. And it's at this time, it is a lifetime, one-time fee. I'm seeing rumor mills saying that Blackmagic may be moving to pay for upgrades or subscription service. So they may not be able to give this away for cheap or for free or for one-time fee. But while they still can, it costs you about what Adobe Premiere Pro costs for a year, and you'll have it for longer. And that's called DaVinci Resolve Studio. And some of the things in there, if you do video enough, you're going to find really useful. Like for Blackwater video, they have this thing called Magic Mask that it truly is magic. It makes your Blackwater videos look so much better, especially when you're shooting in really snotty water, which is where all the good stuff is. So go figure. There are other programs like Apple computers come with iMovie, which is okay. And then Adobe has Rush, which is crap. It could do almost nothing. So this learning curve for DaVinci Resolve, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty steep. But the good news is there's tons of resources if you want to go ahead and start learning on your own. And I'm happy to mentor anybody that wants to put their dip their toe in it. I can show you workflow. I can show you how to do a lot of the basic functions of DaVinci Resolve in about an hour, hour and a half session. And then there's many others out there. Again, high learning curve. You have to commit to this and devote time to it if you want to process. All right, we're in the home stretch. General considerations. When you're shooting video, tell a story. You can go, if you know where you're going and you know what you want to shoot, you can figure out kind of what story you want to tell before you get there. Like I know this site has a lot of skeleton shrimp. I'm going to shoot interesting skeleton shrimp behavior and see if I can tell a story about skeleton shrimp, how they mate, how they eat, how they interact, what's their social behavior, so on and so forth. Subject selection. There are things that I would not shoot for a still photo because I didn't find them interesting that are interesting for video. A classic case is a hermit crab. 99% of the time, I float right over hermit crabs that I find because I don't find them interesting for stills. But they have interesting behavior for video when they're moving all their stuff around and their eyes are moving around, and it's, they're a good video subject. So there isn't always the same thing in video is in stills. The counterexample is things that don't move much. Maybe great still, certain nudibranchs and other slugs, and may not be interesting for video. If all they're doing is like moving their head a little bit, that doesn't make for and you can go look at some of my videos, and some of them are not interesting particularly, but I made a video and posted them because the subject was interesting. Who's your audience? Are you making videos for the Huff, or are you making videos for your family and friends on Facebook? That makes a difference into how much you're going to do, how you're going to shoot, how you're going to process, what sort of thing you're going to do. And what are they going to play it back on? Their phone? If they're going to play it back on their phone, or that's what you want people to play it back on, then the real format is probably the better format. If they're going to play it back on an 8K or 4K device, then you want to shoot for an 8K or 4K device, and probably you're going to do a kind of standard movie 16:9 ratio, which is your standard cinema ratio, or something like that. How much time do you want to spend? How much time do you have? How much processing do you want to do? And what can your camera do? Because often that's the ultimate limiting factor. And your computer, which we talked about. If you can't process it, don't shoot it. All right, what are specific considerations? Length and format. I know that all of you budding videographers out there, or some of you who are accomplished, think that your videos are so great that people are going to want to sit and watch them and be in awe and raptured by them for the full 1 minute and 40 second of your, this is a frogfish opening and closing its mouth. Let me tell you, they aren't, and they won't. So for my reels, I typically max out the reel formats at 15 seconds. And for the horizontal formats, the cinema-like format, 30 seconds is what I shoot for, or less. Because I went and got a Meta professional account, and I went in and checked on Instagram and then on Facebook, and came to find out that, yeah, my video had 1,000 views and the average viewing time was 5 seconds. They're going to watch your video for 5 seconds, and then they're going to move on to the latest influencer or the latest TikTok dance, or the chef reactions guy who's really funny. And you're done. You're in the past. They watched your video. They watched it, I guess, long enough for you to get a view out of it. But it was 5 seconds. So make sure you kind of front load the first, 5 seconds with something interesting to look at. Don't have it all black, or don't try to tell a story like, ooh, in a galaxy far, far away. Next. I'm not watching your video. You're boring. So that's the reality of social media. I'm not talking about the Orange County or Huff or any of those film festivals where it's experts looking at experts material. I'm talking about getting out there and getting your stuff out there and kind of building a reputation or name for yourself in the broader world. So that's my 2 cents. Keep them short and interesting. And oh, by the way, MTV created this in the 80s, no more than about 3 seconds per clip in general. And like what I'll do a lot of times, if I've got 15 good seconds of like the Costa Ciela I showed you, or the skeleton shrimp, that'll hold you. You'll watch the same critter. But if I'm doing a thing where like all the nudibranchs I saw in Annulau on my trip, I can guarantee you that every one of those nudibranchs is going to get no more than 3 seconds. So it's going to be bang, 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 bang with good music, rockin' music, so I can keep your attention and we can move to the next thing. So I talked about that. Sound. I heard somebody the other day, somebody, and probably somebody in your club, somebody in one of the clubs said, somebody made a video and it was, oh man, that's my favorite soundtrack for underwater video. That's fine. That's your opinion. My opinion is that's my least favorite soundtrack. I don't want to hear you snooting and snorting and breathing. I want to hear some kind of music that accompanies your video nicely, or sound effects, because it just makes it a more enjoyable experience for the 5 seconds I'm looking at it. So I have, and I don't steal people's music that they, expect to make money from rightfully. I have a service. I subscribe to Epidemic Sound, and they let me use their stuff for the however much, $18 a month or whatever I'm sending them. It's a Swedish company, got a ton of music. They got AI tools. You can actually cue your video to a point in your video, and it'll find music to match your video. That's pretty good. Or things that I like to do with my videos, I'll say like EDM or lo-fi or Afro beats or house music, or sometimes elegant or beautiful, or I'll say like Butterfly for Costa Cielo or for Circe, and it gives me music that works. Anyways, a rant, but nobody wants to hear you hyperventilate. Well, maybe one guy does, but I don't. And learn how to add the music, and even if you really want to take it the next step, how to match your music, peaks and valleys in your music to what's happening in the clip. Settings. Okay, these are the settings other than the ones I've discussed. Shutter speed. Set your shutter speed to twice your frame rate. If you're shooting at 60 frames per second, set your shutter speed to 120. Now you're going to say, but Steve, I only have 125. Set it to 125. My camera, I shoot, it's actually 59.98, and I record at 119.8. So I actually double it, and that's what I record at. And that's the shutter speed you set. ISO, it doesn't quite mean the same as it does with still photos. If you have lighting, obviously you can go with a lower ISO, but there's something called dual native ISO. And that's an interesting design technologically. What that means is there's actually two separate settings where your ISO is the lowest, or create lowest noise, rather. So you minimize noise at two different settings. On my camera, it's 800 and 4,000 for regular footage, and it's, I think, 1,600 and 5,000 or something for log. But it's not the same necessarily as the typical rule of thumb with still photos is lowest ISO your camera will do to minimize noise. One of the things that will be useful to you is if you go, and I think DxO might have these charts, but there are charts out there for most cameras that will tell you the signal to noise ratio for your camera based on ISO. So it'll show you where your ISO goes up and then where it goes back down. Like for the D850, it just so happens that ISO goes up from 64 is the lowest native ISO, starts to go up, but when you hit 400, it goes back down. And then from that point, it just keeps going up. So a 400 ISO on a D850, Nikon D850 might be a good setting for you to go into your video with. And then depending on what you want on your screen, I keep mine decluttered, but unlike in still photos, unless you're shooting natural light or you're metering off, let's say metering off the background, you generally don't care about the light meter for still photos because you're using strobes. But with video, you always care about it. So I always keep the active histogram or the light meter in view at all times on my screen. And with log, I actually overexpose slightly. It seems to favor overexposing by just a little bit. The rest of the time, I just try to keep the exposure in the middle. Don't change the shutter speed, but you can change the ISO or the aperture. The aperture is good for controlling exposure, but again, it does affect the depth of field. And so lighting may be the best way to actually control the exposure if you're don't want to change your aperture. Okay, I'm on the last several slides, 3 slides. This is what I propose as a recap for most cameras to fill the box. Shoot at 4K, 60 frames per second or faster, a high enough bit rate to meet your resolution, frame rate, and the capacity of your card, a codec of 264 or 265. For color, sRGB, gamma 2.4 if you can set it, chroma 422 or 420, bit depth 8 or 10 bit, profile if you're going to be willing to grade, shoot in RAW or log, and otherwise pick a color profile you like. TGs are an exception, and these pretty much come out of Backscatter, and I tried them. They are tried and true, and they work. The resolution is 1080p. Even though it'll do 4K, you can't get 60 frames per second in 4K. So do 1080p, 60 frames per second, and select super fine for the bit rate because that's going to load the most amount of data. They don't let you pick a codec. It's all embedded in the software and hardware. And the only color adjustment you can make is to the white balance and typically auto white balance. Or if you want to go and do a manual white balance, is good on a TG camera. My final thoughts, and I already beat you to death, but video is definitely harder and more complicated. Before you jump into it, you really need to do your homework. What do I want to accomplish, or what do I think I might want to accomplish? So kind of stretch your goal time frame out or your goal frame out, and what is your budget before you go and invest? Because there's no such thing as future proofing in any of these electronics, cameras, computers, or any of it. But if you can future proof to an extent, make yourself good for 5 or even 10 years, that may be all you need, especially if you're like my age. And then think about what you want to show, but always be ready. Like I was talking to Brian before the presentation and the photo behind him. Always be ready for targets of opportunity. Always be prepared. I typically will take all my diopters off and move my lights to the front when I'm kind of done on the dive and heading back into shore. So if I see that turtle or I see that ray or I see that cool fish, I can pretty quickly get the target of opportunity. And processing, again, I'm available and willing to mentor people in this stuff. So I realize that was a long presentation. I'll stop the share. I'll be willing to take any questions.
No, right. That was really what I expected from you. Excellent, really excellent. Any question?
One or two questions. Got to move on. We have a photo contest tonight, right?
Yeah, here, Mike got a question. Is HDR something you record in or something you edit to afterwards?
I think some cameras have the capability to record in, but it's definitely part of the editing process. I've seen a lot of pro and con on it. I haven't used it because I can't. There is an HLG profile, but because my HDMI doesn't work, I'm not using it. It is one of the things you can use. I think that is something, again, the people who have used it have a lot of complaints, especially the DaVinci Resolve people, about trying to make things look right. So haven't done it. I prefer to shoot in log in general.
Yeah, I tried log. On one trip, and then the next trip I switched back over to sRGB, and I was happier with the sRGB.
sRGB.
I tried the Olympus LUT, and it just doesn't do much. So I was ending up doing all of my color grading in DaVinci.
So what I would cut, and we can do an offline conversation, or you
I
can.
think we're going to have to move on.
Yeah.
Actually, I apologize, but we have to be out of this thing 9 o'clock full stop. So, and that means picking the chairs up and everything else. So, great questions though, and you're available online. I guess people can message you and
Yeah,
maybe look at
Steve.
your.
Yeah, we might want to go get on for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine because I have something important to do too. I need to go dive.
Well, we got Mexican food too, so we're on the other end of the.
I don't think I
scale.
trade with you, man. I wouldn't trade with you. So
But yeah,
thank you,
HDR
everybody.
is a profile
you.
in your
Thank
camera
you.
if you have it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stephen.
Bye.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Martin, I think it's.
What a wonderful presentation, Stephen. Thanks so much.
Yeah, was there another question
Craig,
from?
I'd like to make an announcement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, our Adaptable Foundation is doing their raffle again for a Cayman Brac trip. This is the trip that David Linderman won and didn't bother to go to. I don't know why he didn't give it to me, but anyhow, you can get to the raffle tickets on adapt-ablefoundation.org. And you can click on the little bars up at the top and it'll bring you up to the raffle and everything. And
Worthy
all of
cause.
it goes to help adaptive divers. Thank you.
Very worthy cause. Thanks, Joe.
Somewhere in the coral ocean, scuba diving with devotion. Long thin fish all around us. Close my eyes and they surround us. Take a deep breath through the surface. Blow a few rings and my ears hurt. Lick my lips and I taste salt. What do you mean it's my fault? And I don't wanna fight underwater. You look so good in this light, in this light. And I don't wanna fight in the ocean. We just move together like diving down. We don't look up. Octopus, give him a hug. Everything's beautiful here. No one can hear us down here. Take a deep breath through the surface. Blow a few rings and my ears hurt. Lick my lips and I taste salt. What do you mean it's my fault? And I don't wanna fight underwater. You look so good in this light, in this light. And I don't wanna fight.
The turquoise and the reds and greens. There's beauty in this world I've never seen. They circle around my head, swimming underneath. I'm in a coral reef. The warm water welcomes me. No fear of sharks or the undertow. Underwater wonderland, waving goodbye to the ones above. Beautiful creatures with no cares, suck me down like a summer dream. They're feeding on me, swimming underneath. I'm in a coral reef.
That's how close intermediate is.
Tell you.
Look at that.
5 points separate the top to the bottom.
Yeah, dance is close too. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay,